Hi D&D fans, and welcome to tonight's review of Dragon Magazine, issue number 9 from 1977. I'm Sparkle's Devil Monster, and tonight we have about 5 points in the magazine which sparkle. And that to me means they are worthy, potentially, of inclusion in my 5th edition game. So, we begin with a bald man on the moon. He has a ray gun, his arms are almost the size of his torso, and it seems like he's naked underneath some very light armor, or perhaps just accessories. And this just goes to show that Dragon Magazine, back in the day, was not just for Dungeons & Dragons, but also for other role-playing games, including space opera type games. Anyway, not going to use it in my 5th edition game. Last issue, we only found 3 things that sparkled because it was mostly about the Finzer family, and sadly, this issue is the conclusion of the Finzer family, A Tale of Modern Magic. So, I'm not going to spend too much time on NPCs. Suffice it to say, there is an evil djinn. There is the father of the family as a potential ally. That is Hal Finzer, the magician, riding some crazy beast and hanging out with Aladdin. And then here is a rather dopey-looking Aladdin with his hands behind his back. It may look to you like his hands were cut off, but he just has them behind his back. And in the story, he's trying to convince the djinn to give everyone lots of money. Not particularly interesting. Not going to use it in my 5th edition game. No sparkles. Next up, we have a rather interesting segment by Gary Gygax himself, the creator of Dungeons & Dragons, on alignment. In 5th edition, we still have alignment, but it no longer occupies quite the same sacred place that it did back in 1st edition. This is the Dungeon Master creating his scenario soup with little sprinkles here and there of law and chaos and good and evil. And you, as players, have characters living in that soup, occupying the islands, raiding them for treasure. So, Gary, tell us about alignment. Alignment troubles a considerable number of dungeon masters, possibly due to the value judgments which are involved, and certainly due to the activities and pressures of the players participating in the campaign. Because of this, I thought a few words might help those DMs struggling with the problem, and at the same time confirm alignment, variation, and interaction with those referees not particularly troubled. So back in the day, the terms DM, judge, and referee are synonymous in D&D, largely a matter of choice. Now you see GM a lot for Game Master. The most common problem area seems to lie in established campaigns with a cooperating block of players, all of whom are of like alignment. These higher-level player characters force new entrants into the same alignment, and if the newcomers fail to conform, they dispatch them. And I have seen this with players. A new player joins, and the old veteran players who are rather of one mind after having worked together for a while, cooperated successfully on many a campaign, decide that the new chaotic neutral bard, for instance, is not a valuable contributing member of the team because of the way he pickpockets NPCs they like, and they beat the crap out of him, maybe kill him. So that can happen indeed. And how, Gary, do we fix this problem? Well, In such campaigns, the DM should advise new players that the situation exists. If the new player suspects that the alignment of his or her character will be subject to discovery, it is incumbent upon the player to dissemble, that is, lie, with regard to alignment, or at least deceive, perhaps lie by omission. There is no reason why the new character cannot be listed as neutral or as some alignment which is agreeable to the strong player characters in the game, and carefully played that way until the character rises in level and strength, at such time as the player feels relatively certain that the character can survive in opposition to the block, which is to say the rest of the PCs, the veteran players. And abrupt alignment change can be made, often at great reward to the character. Aha, selling out to the villain. As a DM, I love it. And he goes on to describe alignment in the Greyhawk campaign, talking about how the allied races, the humans and elves and halflings and such, gnomes, tend to be good, and they are allied against the forces of evil and the threat they pose to the world of Greyhawk. So that was pretty cool. It goes on for quite a bit and really gives you an idea into how alignment was useful in early Dungeons & Dragons. So that section definitely deserves a sparkle. Next, we have something to add to our dungeons. And on page 25, we have a table of tombs and crypts. And how to populate them with treasure. So this is Tombs and Crypts by James M. Ward, whose character is none other than the famous wizard Drawmage of Drawmage's Instant Summons. That is simply James Ward, or Jim Ward, as he was called by his friends. It is Jim Ward spelled backwards. That is Drawmage. The mystery, challenge, and pleasure of any wargamer in discovering and opening a tomb of some unknown being is well known to those who have done it. The creation of these tombs can be a very drawn-out, head-scratching process for the judge. I have created a set of graphs to ease this creation process, and the graph includes tombs of the unknown soldier, hero, priest, pair, a mated pair, Lord, King, Patriarch, EHP, I don't know what that is, Magic User, Wizard, and Being, which has the best treasure. I'm not sure what a being is, maybe a god. So you roll for gold pieces, anywhere from 1 to 100,000. You roll for swords, armor, miscellaneous weapons, potions, rings, good miscellaneous magic items, maps, right? Treasure maps are always nice. If you can't find the treasure right in the tomb, at least you get a map. Maps that show where danger lies, also helpful. Jewelry, gems, special items, artifacts, and then a section on guardians. So what sort of monster to populate your dungeon, including the ever-popular Invisible Stalker, which my players discovered in Lost Mine of Phandelver when they investigated the Dragon Barrow. And as for the tomb itself, there is a 40% chance of it being a single room, cave, or mound of dirt. And the others get more complicated with halls with spring traps, rooms with many doors trying to lure robbers away, false doors, secret doors, traps, more traps, wizard locks, symbols, I think he means glyphs of warding, which are a kind of magical trap, and magical doors that require a magic word to open. The word should not be found in the tomb. So, that was pretty cool. Deserves a sparkle. Next, I'm looking for a new monster to populate my dungeons. And on page 28, we have a deadbeat green dragon in a cartoon. No new monster really, except for this green dragon with a hat that covers his eyes and a cigar or cigarette. He's playing snooker with bowling balls, because he's a dragon. He needs big balls to play with. And he has a little imp as a friend. And the imp goes out and greets 8 dwarves who are upset that the dragon has stolen their treasure, the bowling balls. It's a comic, so it's kind of almost funny if you're in the right mindset, but I'm not putting it in my 5th edition game. All right, so how about a spell or a magic item? Well, on page 21, we have a number of spells which are discussed in detail, and this is the first thing that I have enjoyed from the Empire of the Petal Throne campaign setting, kind of science fantasy campaign setting that used original Dungeons & Dragons rules. And on the world of Techumel, there is indeed much magic. And the author, who also wrote a fantasy series of novels set in the same world, talks about the real Techumel of his novels and the game Techumel, where magic is much more common because you can create a party of characters that could all be wizards. And then he goes and discusses the illusion spell, the detect good and evil spell, as a detect hostile, non-hostile spell, the ESP spell, usable across language barriers, cure spells, but my favorite was his discussion of the transmutation spell. So, deserving a sparkle, this spell is very rare on real Techumel of the novels, and I thus have not had much experience of it. So basically, transmutation was a spell from Dungeons & Dragons, and since we're using that rule set purportedly to play Empire of the Petal Throne, it exists now in his game version of the world. And I did not give it much thought when I introduced it into my list. If one allowed it to work on castle walls, then there should never need be any siege, since any wall could be breached by simply aligning a group of wizards at a chosen spot and turning the whole castle wall into water or muck. All right. It does not transmute one element into another. One cannot transmute a field of mud into solid gold, but rather it transmutes one substance, and I limit these to unworked natural earth, stone, water, etc., into another form of the same substance. So we're not changing phases of matter, or no, we are. Water into ice, dirt into mud, water into steam. It is useful to turn water into ice in front of an enemy ship, and thus cause a very satisfactory sinking of the Titanic. I then insist on a roll to see if the block of ice is struck head-on, or just hit a glancing blow by the bow of the oncoming vessel. So that's fun. He's really put some thought into transmutation, having thrown it into his game haphazardly at first. So then a magic item. Well, and I think this will be the last time I go back to the Finzer family story of modern magic, but there is a magic item they have that's kind of cool. It deserves a sparkle, simply because I really love my sparkling water, and they have a special pitcher in the Finzer family, which pours everyone's favorite beverage. Which doesn't mean everyone's favorite beverage has to be sparkle water, but if they poured it for me, it'd be sparkling water, and if they poured it for you, it could be champagne, or something like, if you're a vampire, blood. All right, finally, the wild card. Here in Dragon number 9, our wild card comes in the form of a discussion of the use of a flask of oil. How much damage does a flask of oil set on fire do to a monster? I insist that a small flask of oil cannot do much to a large creature, or even to a small one which is not automatically afraid of fire. After all, these flasks are not 10-liter tins. I insist further that there are several large ifs to the practice of throwing oil flasks at an attacker and then setting them conveniently on fire with a torch. Does the little clay flask break when it hits the creature? Does it spread over a vital area of the beastie? In the pandemonium of melee, does the torch reach the oil and set it alight? Lots of factors must be considered, etc., etc. So try an experiment. Fill a small clay bottle with petrol or kerosene. Please don't try this at home. Throw it at a tree trunk some 10 to 15 feet away. If it breaks, then try throwing a stick dipped in red paint, oh, okay, it's not on fire, at the stain while having one's friends hop up and down in front of you, trying to distract you. If the red paint dabs the stain on the tree trunk, you have scored a hit. Anyway, there's also the problem of soft monsters, it bounces off their belly. It's pretty interesting, and it's fun to see that players have been throwing flasks of oil at monsters and then lighting them on fire since 1977. You even see it in video games today. Most recently, I saw it in Sekiro, which is a ninja-themed video game. You can throw flasks of oil at monsters and then light them on fire. It does extra damage. And in 5th edition, this is something you can do, and it's actually one of the more effective attacks at first level. I think you get more damage dice out of it than simply firing a short bow or whatever at an enemy. So very cool. Definitely deserves a sparkle for the wild card, and that leaves Dragon number 9 with a rating of 5 sparkles out of 10, which is a high F. So I'm not opening a can on camera today. But I have Red Dragon number 10, and Dragon 10 through 20 get quite better than the first 10, so I look forward to drinking many more cans of sparkle water with you to come. Good night.